And today we're going to look at using Crosstab to calculate out some data. And so Crosstab is basically that little matrix that we're going to set up that we talked about in the lectures. Also, you might hear it called as a contingency table, but it's a matrix, and we're going to look at the frequency distribution of the variables. Okay, and so this is really easy to do in Excel. So what are we going to do? Questions. Are there more heavy drinkers or heavy smokers in the data set? In the data set, if it's an occasional drinker, are they more likely to be a non-smoker, occasional smoker, heavy smoker? And if the individual in the data set is a heavy smoker, are they are they most likely to be a non-drinker, occasional drinker, heavy drinker? So, some codes that we have to be aware of. It's all coded so that we have non is N, O is occasional, H is heavy, and then S and D is for smoker or drinker. So if we go and we look, this is the amount of data that we have. And so we're going to go and we're going to set this up now. We're going to use our framework that's already put together here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here and I'm going to, if I can get in the data tab, I am going to create some range names for smoking and drinking. Just to make things easier for me, because I'm going to be dragging some stuff around that I'm not going to want to move. And we're just going to go all the way to the bottom of the data set here. There's 8,000 data points. Now I did grab the titles there, and I grabbed both columns because I can do this all at the same time. I'm going to go to formulas, create from selection, and now since there's a lot of text, Excel doesn't quite know where it wants you to take the title from, and so it's either top row or the left row. We want to force it to take it from the top row because we want these called smoking and drinking. So now I'm going to hit OK. Now if I go back and highlight those, or if I just type in, smoking and drinking are now both variables, that'll make our lives a little bit easier. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go and we are going to put together our Countifs and our Crosstab. So we're going to start this out. We're going to go equals Countifs. So we're going to count cells in a specific range. So what are we doing here? Well, this first column is going to be the non-smokers that are also non-drinkers. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab that first data set, and that would have been column B, which, come over here, that's going to be the smoking. So crosstabs is the address of the other sheet, and then we're just going to type in smoking. Let's get rid of that and just type in smoking here. Because it doesn't need, since we're not grabbing a cell, it doesn't need that specific designation of the sheet because it already knows from smoking. So we're going to have our smoking data. We are going to have our drinking data, which was their other. And so that's the nice thing about range. That's the nice thing about range names is now smoking and drinking are in there. They're really easy to see what's going on. Now, the last thing that we're going to need is we are going to need what are we counting? So we're doing Countifs. We're doing Countifs for the non-smokers that are non-drinkers. So that A4, I'll close that, we'll execute. We've entered too few arguments. Where'd I mess up? Oh, because I've got two different ranges. That is my mistake because I wasn't paying attention to the format. So if we go criteria range 1, criteria 1, range 2, criteria 2. We have two criteria in there. So I was kind of jumping ahead. So after smoking, we have to tell it, well, I want you to count all the smokers. In fact, if we ended it right there, what that's going to do is that's going to go through and that's going to count all the smoking and people that smoke that are listed as non-smokers. So that's one set of criteria. Now I want to add the second set, which is the drinkers. So drinking and then non-drinkers. So now what that's going to do is it's going to do the Countif, but we're now with two separate variables. And so we can see that drops to 2118. Now the big reason I did it like this, that I have those variables in there, is I'm going to be able to drag things around and fill in. But there is a small problem. Let's just do this screwed up on purpose. If I drag that over there, notice we wanted this one to drag. That's fine. We didn't want this one. So we have to actually lock things in a little bit differently. So on the smoking side, which is B3, I want it to be able to go and change columns, but I don't want to be able to change rows because I am going to drag it down. So I'm going to put a $sign in front of the rows so that doesn't change. On the drinking side here, I want it to be able to change rows, but I don't want it to be able to change columns, so I'll put a $sign in front of the A. Okay, now when I go and I drag that over, I'll be able to drag it all the way over with no problems and drag it down. And so now if we go click on one of these, we can see it locked it into position, and since we named those ranges smoking and drinking, nothing moves. Now the last thing, we have this totals were all put together here already because it was already coded in. So let's just do our code through here and to add that up. Okay, and so we have a total of 8,761 people in the data set. And so the problem asked us, are there more heavy drinkers or heavy smokers? Well, heavy smokers, there's 1,448, the total of all of them. Heavy drinkers, there's 2,365. So are there definitely more heavy drinkers? Okay, let's do this now in a different way. We will go and we will do it using a pivot table. First thing we're going to do is we're going to start the data set. So we'll go to data, and then we're going to insert a pivot table. I like going to the tab where the data is going to be because when I go and do this, it's going to, oh, it should have picked up the data. Okay, but it didn't. So we'll do that. Typically, I like doing that because it goes and automatically highlights the data. So I'm not sure if something I did incorrect there or not, but that's okay. We need to highlight all the data that we're going to use. So there's our data. We're going to throw this in an existing worksheet. We're actually going to throw it into Crosstabs and here because we want it to be over near the other data. Can add this to the data model, which just saves the stuff. I'm not really going to worry about that right now. We're just going to say okay. Oh, merge cell. What merge cell did I grab? Okay, 1 second. So apparently I was clicking on a merge cell somewhere in the other sheet, and I still can't find out where that is, but let's go. And I also figured out what I was doing wrong, why it was not automatically selecting the data. If I have the cursor somewhere in here when I go to pivot table, then it automatically will pick up that data. I've just never noticed that before, usually because I've already had my cursor in there. So we're going to go to existing worksheet. We're going to come over to Crosstabs, and we're just going to click here and put it down. And okay, and this time it works. And so as I'm looking at things, I'm going to want to look at the smoking and the drinking data. And so what I want to do is, because I do want to make a crosstab, so I'm going to want smoking along one and drinking along the other. I want it to match up here. So since I've got drinking in the first column here, so the rows are going to be drinking, I'm going to pull smoking to the columns. Okay, and so what we have now is it's kind of put together. So we've got our row labels, we have our column labels. We'll clean this up in a minute. And so what I want to do is I want to add over here my counts, because I want to count the number of things that we have. Okay, one quick thing. Let's go and right click and then go, oh, sorry, not right click, come up here, more sorting options. Let's do some manual, so let's drag this around. So non-drinker should be at the top. I always dislike doing this with the pivot tables because it's never easy. So, okay, and then we look over here on our columns, and I'm just trying to match the, what we did in Excel here. So this one should be over here, and then this one should be over here. Okay, so now that all matches, and so now what we want to do is we want to look at the values. So we have in our rows here the drinking, so I want to count the number of smokers for each of those categories. So I'll go and I'll drag smoking in here, and there we go. We can see the numbers all match up, and so we've put that table together. Okay, and so now the next thing that we're going to do is we are going to move into making our percentage of the totals, and this one's going to be easy because we've got the stuff already there. So we're just going to go equals how many non-smokers, non-drinkers we have, and then we're just going to divide that by the total of non-drinkers. I'm going to hit F4 to lock that one in because I am going to drag that left to right. And so there we go. And then here, we'll just, to make sure, because it's always good to check, we will sum up the rows. 100%. That's exactly what we want. We should just be able to drag this down. Let's see if that works. Apparently not, because we got 135% here. What did I not lock in? And see, I completely locked it in so this didn't change. I wanted to have the rows be able to index, which is not what they did. So I'm going to come back to this original one. I want the column to not move, but the rows to move. So we'll unlock the rows. Actually, that's not going to work either, is it? Oh, maybe it did. Yeah. And let's drag that down. It's always good to go double check these because sometimes even when you have been doing it for a long time, sometimes you screw things up. Okay, and so we have that there. How do we take our pivot table and have that change? Well, instead of displaying counts, we can go in here and go to value field settings, and we can show the values as percentage of the grand total. Hit OK, and let's see, check the numbers. Oh, that's actually not the way that we want to do that. I'm sorry. Let's go and fix that. Because what mistake did I just make? Well, I said percentage of grand total. That's not what we want to do. We're doing the rows. It even says it right there, and I completely missed it. So let's go back in here, value field settings, show values as, not percentage of grand total, percentage of row total. Hit OK, and there we go. That seems to have fixed everything. These numbers are to two decimal places. So let's just double check. Oh, that's 3. There we go, 2 decimal places. Now everything matches up. Now, I could have made another table, but I'm just being a little bit lazy. So the last thing we have is we're going to have percentage of column totals. We're going to do the same thing. So it's going to equal the non-smoker divided by the drinker, or excuse me, by the total, and we'll lock in the row this time because we're going to be changing the columns. We want the column to change. And so 41.3, that works. We'll drag that down. And just to double check our numbers, see if we get 100%, which hopefully we will. There we go. We'll just click drag that over and just randomly click one of these, check that. Yeah, everything's working just like we wanted to do. And so let's, oh, actually the answer to question 2, if an individual is a occasional drinker, they are more likely to be a non-smoker. And the last thing, we're going to come in here, change field settings, so show value as percentage of column total, and there we go. The pivot table matches up with our Excel table. And so if the individual is a heavy smoker, they are most likely to be a heavy drinker.